Hello, everybody in the PBE out there and everywhere, and welcome to episode 4 of the Max Earners with MNT. There is no T this week. He caught a sudden case of, oops, I couldn't record. I hope T Stalls is doing okay. Instead, we have a replacement this week. It is not a nice sounding Australian man, it's Bazooka Joe.
I'm
Hello,
sorry
Joe.
to,
Before
yeah,
we
I'm
get
sorry
started,
to
we're stepping on each other's toes already. This is gonna go great. Uh, before
exactly.
before we get started, I just want you to go through your resume, talk about who you are, like PBE wise, what jobs you've done, the team that you ran, hint hint, and stuff like that. So just give your resume, what team you're part of, all that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So my player is Bazooka Joe. I started in season 34, and I started off with the Dillos as I wasn't even in the draft. I got picked up off of waivers. And since then, I played 2 seasons with the Dillos, won a World Series with them, and then picked up and became the co-GM with Dak there. Dak ended up leaving, and I split time with Zodiac being GM with me. And then I just recently stepped down this season to let DoubleDub take over for me. And right now, I don't currently have a job until I'm doing this job right now. But other than that, this is the way I'm getting money in the PBE. So
Yeah, welcome to the YouTube team. Um, Great to have you be a part of Rewind and everything else. So, on today's show, we've got some hot takes from Joe and myself about the current state of PBE, some of the mine to do with the changes we got made. We'll hear what Joe's is a little bit later. Um, the hot seats in the PBE. Now, necessarily, there aren't people moving teams or anything. There's no firing, there's no real pressure. But some of the teams that we think are on the verge of collapse or the GMs really need to do something, the quote unquote hot seats. Pretend that GM's positions are at stake instead of just there until they get bored or run out of town um, for a moment and entertain is not the word. Indulge us in our conversation about who's on the hot seat here in the PvE. And then the third and final segment of the day, we'll talk about the miners. We haven't talked about them yet on the show, but I do kind of want to talk about them a little bit this week because there's a State College Swifties team right now that is doing very, very well. I want to talk about kind of why they're doing well. And beyond the obvious answer, which we will get to that also, but there's also something moving forward with them that I want to discuss and with the miners in general when we get there. So stay tuned for that. But first, it's PBE hot takes. Bazooka Joe and myself, LeatherneckMike. I'll start with mine. So we just had a recent change here in the league. Um, so basically, a rich billionaire bought Twitter, and that rich billionaire decided that Twitter needed to make money, and he decided to do some techie thing that I don't really understand that means we can't do Twitter anymore for league money. So head office then decided, well, screw it. Instead of getting 950K a week from tweets or doing we have to find an alternative. So how about the SHL alternative, which is called Chirper, which is basically a forum thread. Um, that's you put a tweet on there, not an actual tweet, but just word tweet, um, and you get your money that way. Well, head office here decided not to do that. They decided to make the JPT, instead of being worth, was it 300K, I think. They decided to make it worth 1.5 million, which basically covers the Twitter money. Now, some will say that this change is completely and utterly broken, which kind of is, but I also think this legitimately is probably the biggest change, at least in my time in sim leagues in the last 2.5 years. This is the biggest change one of the big three leagues in our purview has ever made for min earners. Like,
yeah,
this changes the game for that guy who doesn't want to do PTs. It's like, dude, if you write 150 words, your player can live. So like this is huge. Like for those guys and girls that just want to be relievers, like this is massive. Like this guarantees that you can get that weekly training every week and roll money, and then the contract to where pretty much are guaranteed rookie equipment, and then later in your career, maybe if the 500Ks have built up a little bit, you can get to the All-Star level. Like no money, no time spent in PvE, which is kind of what some relievers do, some super casual learners do. Like that bottom end activity just got a lot easier to do and a lot more viable. Not and not because of an effect of the sim engine, but because of a change to the point is. So shout out to head office for one of legitimately the biggest changes in the league's history. And it seems like such
Yeah.
a small thing, but it's massive.
Oh, coming from a guy that stopped tweeting months ago. Yeah, thank you for this because it's free money. And you just said it. You hit the nail on the head by saying that those semi-active, you know, earners are finally going to be somewhat decent when they get called up and stuff like that. It's definitely a big hit. So I like it.
Like I can't convince you to do every like Joe, you know this. You were minors GM too. I might not be able to convince you to do every PT. There are some guys who just can't do that. But
Hmm.
do this one thing every week and you'll have money for the whole year. You're literally fine. It's great. I
Yep,
love it.
it's huge.
So what's yours, my
I,
friend?
I would say my hot take, and it was all over PTs this week. We're kind of lacking in the actives right now, and I would say contracting or detracting the minor leagues, taking away maybe two teams. Now I don't know what teams they are, and I'm not going to say what teams they should be, but hear me out because of all these PTs. Since recruitment and stuff has been moving on, recruitment head, who I think actually was probably you
It was.
before. It was.
Yeah.
Not saying that you did a bad job, but you did a good job, and now we're kind of just left in limbo here. But my hot take, I guess, would be to go about maybe seeing 8 teams and seeing where it brings us to, and possibly getting and saving the minor leagues, because you and I both feel that in the next couple seasons, and I especially if it keeps at 10 teams, it could eventually be just a bot graveyard.
And
That's what I'm
and
afraid
I
of.
actually kind of love that you bring this up because this is something I want to touch on and go more in depth on later. But I'll just for now I'll suffice it to say I 100% agree with you. And as somebody who was a minors GM and voted for expansion at the time, we screwed that up. We should never have
Oh well.
like okay, look. Before I say this, the original lemurs, I have no problem with them. The Bears, really at any point, I have no problem with them. I love what I have been, the Bears Discord I've been in. I love what Jabs and Punk and Steel, like I love, and Danny obviously, like I love what those guys have done with that team. That
Hmm.
team is great. We are a better league for having had it. But from a sheer numbers perspective, we should not have done that. We screwed that up.
Right.
If we
Yeah.
knew that Majors expansion was coming, which we didn't, we would not have done that. Because when Majors expansion happens, there's a vacuum and a bunch of players get sucked out. The reason that those 10 teams happened was the minors was full and we were platooning people and we were like, help, I'm platooning 2 hitters. This
Okay. So I
sucks
didn't
for the
know that.
user experience.
I gotcha. So I
We
didn't
need to
know this.
expand. We
Yeah.
expanded. Nobody told I have been told that no one told expansion committee that we were expanding. Or there was no like, hey, are you going to be expanding the major soon? Like I was told. I don't know if this is true. I was told that never happened. So if that is the case, which events preceding that makes sense, when majors expansion happens and a bunch of players got sucked out, the minors kind of got a little dry. Now I think the minors is in a healthy place right now. So would 8 have been overloaded and we may have gone to 10 anyway? Yeah, that could be,
Possibly.
but
Hmm.
I don't really think that we've ever had too many players for the 10. So I think 8 would have always been okay, but yeah, I totally agree with you. I have been told that it will never happen with the current people that are in charge of the minors, but I really think that it needs to start getting considered. I'll go
I
and we can revisit this later. We will go into why, but yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Cool. Yeah, no, that was all over PT, so I figured, hey, why not just bring it up and talk about it?
So, moving on, like I said, we'll get back to that later. For you who's not in show business, Joe, that's called a tease. It, but moving on very swiftly from that, that's also called a tease.
Hey, a segue.
It's also called a terrible pun. Moving on from that very swiftly, the hot seats in the PBE. I kind of brought this up at the beginning. Joe and I each have a team that we think is on the hot seat. Again, it's not really they should be fired. It's more of a they're in the most trouble. We're wondering what the heck that they're like, what they're going to do, basically.
Well, now hold up. It depends on what team you're going to say. Then we can talk about if they should be fired or not.
This is gonna get spicy. I like it. All right, so we're gonna have a team that's on the hot seat, each of us, and then we're gonna have like an honorable mention team that we're keeping a close eye on. Uh, I'll go first. My team that I would say, like, if this was real life, that I would say is on the hot seat is the Vancouver Vandals. The reasons for this are pretty obvious and self-explanatory. Babs and Scud, it was when Babs got in there to co with Scud when Scud couldn't find a co. Sco couldn't find a cud.
Yeah.
Scud couldn't find a co. Um, easy for me to say, right?
Right.
Basically, the thing that Babs did, Babs likes to go all in. Babs is very much a what future? I gotta win right now. And you can tell that Scud kind of followed the older, wiser advice, and like there is even if you say Scud did it all on his own, it's kind of unavoidable that there's some influence there. So Vancouver went all in, and they failed. They didn't even make it to a World Series. They didn't get that World Series. This year, they're starting to fall. Next year and beyond, they are crashing and burning. And the unfortunate thing for Vancouver is, where are your draft picks, sir? For the
Right.
last like 3 years, all traded away. So my hot seat team with Scud, with Babs especially, because poor Babs is supposed to be an interim, but the GM pool doesn't exist. So with Scud and with Babs, how are you guys going to fix this? Are you guys going to be the ones to fix this? Because hey, when your competitive window doesn't work out, you're jaded as hell, and
Oh yeah.
with damn good reason. Ask Nola in Nashville.
Hmm.
So will you stick it out, or will they stick it out? I should use the proper verbiage there, pal. Will they stick it out, the both of them? Will they be able to do something in the near future and not take 8, 9, 10 seasons to recover from this, like the last time the Vandals were good, to then them being good this time around? Those are the questions that I have for them. So my hot seat team, the team that I think is in the worst position in the league right now, is Vancouver. They are on the edge of the cliff. This year they're starting to fall off, and next year they're going to crater. And not by choice, and not by trading people for and getting assets for it, just by sheer fall off. And it's really unfortunate. So,
Yeah.
Joe, your hot seat team.
I'm going to stay in the same division, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, but they are somewhat coming on the up and up. I'm going to go with the Boise Raptors at this time. They do have the worst record right now in the sim, and the last few seasons have just been pretty dog water. My problem is with them is exactly the same thing. Where's their future? They traded away their two number ones in the upcoming draft. I just I'm unsure of where they're going when they have when they have teams like Cancun, Seattle, and even Indianapolis, the apex to a certain degree, that are showing you kind of where you need to go is just full on just sell and get draft picks. And I just don't see it as of right now with Boise, as they're trying to stay relevant, but they're not. Again, that's just my hot take. Take it or leave it how it is. So that would be mine.
Well, your hot seat, your hot take on the hot seat, because and look, I will say, in defense of them, which some people will find very amusing for me, in defense of them here, the reason that I don't have them warmer, like I have them is, if this doesn't work out, this is going to look really bad because previous to this, they did draft people. I feel like it is slightly disingenuous to say they don't have a future. I don't think they have a complete one. There are players there for the future. Look at their
Right.
prospect farm, look at their pool. They do exist. Now, is it a complete? Because again, look at where the league is at right now with how many max actives that you have to have on your team to make the playoffs.
That's very true.
Does
Yeah.
Boise have that number? No. Do they have like that? Like that's indiscernible. They need to add people. So I think that's where your point about the pick trading comes in. You traded, and when we go 10 seasons down the line, everything else, did you trade two maxes for one max, and was that a problem for you? That question get answered way down the road.
Yeah.
In
Time will tell.
Boise, and again, I bring that up again because ultimately that's what it is. So 41-42, they have no first round pick. Will it hurt them? We don't know. It could
Hmm.
be. It could turn out to be a great trade for both teams, one team, the other team, whatever. But so you got Boise on the hot seat. My It's weird to do an honorable mention for a hot seat because this very much sounds like a negative thing. An honorable mention I feel like is positive.
I
So this
agree.
is my dishonorable mention, if you will. Um, the team that I think, other than Vancouver, is in the worst position, but the GM in charge is so good. I'm just in a state of how are you gonna get out of this? With more of a how are you going to pull it off this time than man, I don't know how you're going to get out of this is San Antonio. San Antonio is very old. They are one of the oldest teams in the league by far. You look at the top end of the roster, it is super old. It's all regressing. And there was a couple of very rare Juosu misses in the draft very recently that have hurt them. Now, the thing for them versus Vancouver, even with a couple of blips on the radar in the draft, they still had their picks. And they still have, even if some of them turned out to be bodies or not the max earners they expected, still have them to use or to trade or whatever else. So San Antonio, the reason that they're not up on the same level as Vancouver is because number one, they're better right now. So Vancouver is kind of the more pressing, hey, there's a problem here. And number two, because they do have more assets and it's not too late to sell if Juosu decides she wants to. And I'm just going to be franking over here. Scud and Babs, Juosu, and I don't mean to discredit the co here, but whoever the co is, I trust Juosu like that completely, like an Enoch or like a person man. I trust Juosu to get out of it more than I trust Vancouver's pairing to, because Juosu has shown over a 40 season period that ability. I haven't seen that from Vancouver yet. I'm not sure if they're going to stick it out, all those kinds of things. So there's mine. My
Yeah.
hot seat is Vancouver. My
I was just running
100
through
is
the.
San Antonio.
Yeah, I was just running through their pitching staff and actually their roster and seeing that 5 out of their 8 arms in the staff are over 30
Oh, yeah.
is quite alarming. Yeah, actually, you're right. So,
All right. So
um,
your honorable or dishonorable mention, depending on how you view this.
my dishonorable mention, and gosh, man, I'm gonna catch a lot of slack for this, but I'm gonna throw it out there
This is
anyways.
going to
And
be
this
hilarious. I'm just going to say this
this
right now. I don't know why you're doing this. This is going to be very funny.
this has absolutely nothing against Zach and TJ, but I'm gonna say Nashville. And the reason why I'm gonna say Nashville is they have been good for so long. And like we talked about before, is where is it gonna come down? Is it gonna come down in a slow movement like it seems to have been? We peaked at the World Series, we won it, and we keep making the playoffs. I mean, in my tenure here, we've only missed the playoffs once, and this is the most automatic team I feel in the PBE for the last since they came into the league in like season 19, I believe, just being so solid. But I would say um, that what we have going on with our picks and stuff like that, and in the future and stuff like that, is I just don't see the pitching staff catching fire in the future. We just don't have the assets to maintain. And I seem last draft we seemed to kind of we only needed pitchers and we kind of worried about pitching, and we settled for some guys that I thought we could have gotten later on. But at this time, I would put Nashville as a look. They're not going to go away as quickly as other teams. They're still going to be around. We're going to make trades. We're going to maintain. I feel like we can do it, but don't be.
Yeah,
It
but
wouldn't surprise
objectively,
me in the
from the
next.
perspective right now, you're wondering, oh, they're starting to teeter. I wonder if you can do this.
It wouldn't surprise me in the next 3 or 4 seasons that we are
If they
completely
finally fall.
out of the
And
division. Yeah.
and again, you kind of said it with Boise as the teams that set the example. Those teams that you said set the example were all in the same conference.
Right.
So there's so much to deal with in the Nashville conference where you're looking at like next season in particular, there are 6 teams not only that can make the playoffs, but should make the playoffs unless NOLA drops off a cliff
Right.
or Nashville or Detroit drop off a cliff. There's 6 teams that can and should make the playoffs. Yeah, good luck.
It's just so competitive.
Yeah. Oh,
Just
also,
so
by the
competitive.
way, um, not to dwell on the hot takes thing, but notice how 3 of the teams that were in trouble were in the one conference and the 6 strongest are in the other.
Go
um,
champions.
champions versus legends. Champions wins every time. Get
Yeah,
out of here with your crap. Anyway, I guess that's a hot take part 2 from Mike. Champions over legends.
I love it.
Anyway, so that's it. We're gonna take a break right now. We're gonna go to one of the lovely ads that we have had made for us here at the YouTube team that are so clearly professionally done. High budget here. We're gonna go to a break, and then when we get back, we will talk about the minors as a whole, but more specifically, them good old State College Swift Steeds. That's when we get back on Max Earners with M and T, but not with M and T this week, just M and B. Back with our second and final segment on the Max Earners with M and T, except it's not T, it's B. It's Bazooka Joe. So we want to talk about the minors now. The State College Swifties are off to a very good start in the league right now. We are, as we record, it is, oh God, what day is it? It's Wednesday, I think. Yes, it is. It is Wednesday night. So we are halfway through the second week of the year, currently in PBE season 40. And the Swifties right now are doing very well. They're 30-11. They're on top of the minors, and it's kind of not hard to see why. Now, I think it's quite a big gap. I didn't expect it to be 5 games at this point, which to me means it could get even worse going forward. But I wanted to kind of talk about why they're so good right now. And Joe, as the more recent minors GM, I'll let you lead this one off. What has impressed you most about State College this year? And you can do on-field and off-field if you wish. If you wish.
um, their drafts the last few years have just been nails. That's probably, I mean, that's what Unconfident and unfortunately Alikh, I hate to say that name, have done so well.
What did he do to you?
It's Alikh, man. I mean, he did leave the OBX, and once Snyder got retirement, OBX is like, all right, screw it, we're done. I'm just kidding. But no, the Swift Steeds, what they've been doing in the
So you
past,
talk bad about him and then you blame OBX's downfall. Oh my god.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But their last few drafts, who they've gotten, and even with their last picks, have just been they've hit on everything. I mean, hitting wise, the one reason that they're gonna be good and they're gonna make the playoffs and possibly win the World Series this year
I mean, they're
is
favorites again.
is their hitting. Clearly, now, they had every single person come back from last year, all actives, to basically make one more run. And pitching wise, I think they may have lost maybe one or two pitchers.
They
T.S.
lost
Stoles,
Stun, but
yeah, Stun Gun
yeah.
being one of them.
And then they
But
added
other
Alikh, so it
right,
net there. Oh, they lost Nameless Names player too, but
that's the
they
other one.
added
Yeah,
Alikh, so or they at least have the young pitching.
yeah. So I mean, this is just seasons of hitting every single draft pick. It seems like, and also making some good trades to get the 1 and 2 pick a couple seasons ago, back to back with the Ranas. Uh, I'm saying that pitching stats wise, they're either first or second in every single category. And in batting stats wise, they're first in every single category except for bases on balls, which they're second. And that's, I'm only assuming because they're hitting everything that comes at them.
And
I mean, this
stolen
team,
bases, don't forget.
okay, right? They don't steal bases. 10th,
Nope.
they're dead last, which is just absolutely awful. So we'll mark them down for that too.
Okay.
An A plus plus to an A plus.
So you're not going to give him the extra point because Maple Dogwood is hitting 430, like actually 430.
Well, he's hitting 423, and he was
Or
also batter of
433.
the month, batter of the month for minors.
You think?
Maple Dogwood, I got to give him a shout out. Nashville legend right there. Uh, Jose 43 and a quarter, unconfident. Nashville legend. Come on, let's keep going down. All right, I'm done.
Wait, how is Maple Dogwood a Nashville legend?
Oh man, he pitched for us a couple seasons
Wait, when did Dogwood
at
pitch for you?
the tail end of his career, like season 34 and 35.
No, I didn't actually know that. I thought it
Oh
was
well,
like just DVS and well, I guess I forgot where he went after. So yeah, it could have been.
uh, I'm
Um,
just dropping knowledge.
dropping bombs. Um, so the state college for me, I want to look at something for a second. Look at something a little bit deeper. So this is the collective team war, and this is gathered by our stats team. So thank you very much to those guys, our research department. They do some great work that we ignore. No, I'm kidding. They do great work. Um, so if you look at the war that they had last year, they had the most collective war amongst the team. They have 35.8 war as a team last season. The Hepcats, like for example, they were 33.4. They were second, so two teams clearly had everybody else in their players' total war. Kansas City lost 14 of that, so they had what our research department has called war retain, which is basically the war of the returning members from last season of 19.3, which is the second highest in the minors coming into the year. State College is 27.3. They only lost 8.5 war, which is actually third. It's only third most for the team that just won won the championship a couple seasons ago and then was in it last year. Usually, when you make a couple World Series in a row, you lose a lot. If you get there, you lose a lot the year after.
Oh yeah,
They didn't. They lost the third least of the minors in terms of WAR. It was mostly on the pitching side. They still have a ridiculously good batting order. So State College is good right now. And I don't want to say this because I have praised them individually in their locker room and there's a lot of places where I've talked about the amazing job that Anika and Confident have done taking a dead team and making them good. But I mean, look, it's the minors. Like, there is some degree of luck involved. The people that they had get drafted got drafted by the right teams in the right cap situations. That goes for
hmm
literally everyone. Not them, not just them. That goes for every other team. But they drafted the right people, and those people, fortunate for State College, have stayed down the right amount of years where they're in this position.
right.
So I never look. I wanted the Nick to GM. I was one of the people that pushed him to do so, and I'm confident to get back in the seat to help guide him, and them two to work together, and the different things that they bring to the table, like that partnership. Never in my wildest dreams I think it turned into a dynasty inside of 5 seasons. I mean, it started after two, but so excellent job. But they've done incredible work in the draft, like Joe mentioned, and they've also had a great amount of fortune in who has stayed down and who has stayed up, and who has gone up, and they've done a really good job building these players so
Big
that they can
time.
have efficient, good quality builds. So
Yep.
that's kind of the Swifties specific section. I wanted to take some time and talk about kind of the minors as a whole right now. And Joe, as a more recent minors GM, you can kind of touch on this too. Um, I think we're at an interesting spot, and it is Swifties related. I think this is the last great minors team. Like the 21 Swifties, the very early 20s San Bernardino, like 23, 24-ish. The 25-26 Hepcats, the 26-27 era Kingpins, like the teams with the truly dominant runs you had in that time frame. Then you have
Hmm.
Four Peak California, the back-to-back Mingos are in there. Like you've had great teams along the way in the minors. There's usually been a couple teams at the top, but there's been great teams. You have your interruption Delos championships, or Bears making it, or Louisville making it, whatever. But
But
generally, the minors has been dominated at the top by a few teams, and those teams' greater years. I think this for state this state college run is the last great run. Because if you look at the cap right now, the men's change and everything else, I think the minors is about to get emptied quite a bit. In terms of talent, just in my opinion, looking at everything. So really, what I want to ask you, Joe, where is your feelings on where minors is going in the future?
I I want to disagree with you. Actually, very badly. I want to because I feel like the minors is a huge part of the PBE, which it is. I just feel like this is where the new user gets into it. This is where we need to keep these new users, active, and we want to keep them interested. And at this time, I feel like we're showing them maybe some teams are showing them. I mean, if they're lucky enough to get with the Swift Steeds or other good teams, and I would even say it, Amarillo Armadillos, but the team that I came from,
Yeah, I think you
we have
guys
an
do a good job.
we have an active locker room.
Yeah.
We help. We do great. We have people uh, from from past come up and always take questions and always answer them for new guys. I do feel like that when they get into a new team and it's just a wasteland. Not many people are active. I think it might kill their experience, and that's something that really worries me for the future of the PBE. So yeah, I could see it uh, as the miners could come down to, and like I said, what we talked about in the hot take about bringing it down a couple teams, but I just don't see it. So hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully we can get some more actives here in the next few seasons.
And I guess I could clarify my stance on the last great team. Not that there won't be builds or there won't be a 60 something win team again, but at least from what I can see right now, that like the entire starting lineup is active,
Right.
most of the
Exactly.
rotation inactive. You have IA pen arms that you can use and also bots because you have that IA starter you can shove in the back end. Like that, like the place that the miners has been living, other than a couple of seasons right after Majors expansion, since like season whatever, certainly since I came to the league, so at least like 21.
Hmm.
That place that miners has lived for 20 something, or not 20 something, for nearly 20 seasons. I think is very quickly going to be coming to an end. And like you, I am quite concerned because as the recruitment team head, I had plans laid. My first classes, I was recruitment head 3 times. My first class went great. My second class did not go nearly as well as I wanted it to.
Right.
And because bad luck. My in-season recruiting didn't go nearly as well as I wanted to because I ran into stumbling blocks. And then my third one went absolutely god awful because I hit a bunch of stumbling blocks and I did some severe miscalculations, and then the bailout plan didn't really bail me out.
Right.
So recruitment in the league is one of the most difficult things to do. Frankly, I think you should just give the recruitment head whatever they want to be the recruitment head. If you can find somebody who's actually going to have the want to do it, just pay them whatever. Who gives a damn? You need recruitment. So, but anyway, with recruitment the way it is, with the cap the way it is, which is going to force people to come up sooner, I worry that the days of the 10, 11 person active minors teams are at their close. What I mean
Yeah.
by all of that. And
I can.
from my inference from our conversation here today, I think you feel the same way.
I do. It's yeah. I mean, this, like you said, the Swift Teeds team. I can't even say it. Is the only reason why they're this good and they're running through the minors right now is because of all the activity, and I mean, you could just see other teams, the California Firehawks, the Lemurs, and stuff. You could just see how I mean, even the Dillos, they have bots now that in the past, uh, we could put the bots away. We didn't have to use them, but now they're making a comeback, and you can tell that uh, when we're running a middle relief with our old bots like Garlic Bread and Trongle Manning, Gritty's coming out as a starter. You know that it's kind of we're running out of pitchers, and we're not really making much headway for recruiting. It seems so. Hopefully it changes, but time will tell.
And oh, you mentioned California, and I want to bring them up because I feel really bad for California because they have a fully active rotation and they're awful.
I know.
That is
Yep.
such a weird experience. No, seriously. As a guy who was a minors GM as long as I was, which I'm not going to say it was forever, but the 8 seasons or 9, whatever the exact total is, and just somebody who's the Hepcats is kind of my first love and my biggest love in the PBE, observing the minors as I have, being bad with a fully active rotation is something that doesn't compute in my brain, and it is
It hurts.
absolutely nothing the fault of what Lumo and Caleb have done, in my opinion. There is just they're getting screwed by the sim. Two, they just don't have the hitting, which is
No.
such an unfortunate thing. It's like you have this great rotation and there's nothing there. So there's nothing there hitting. There's not, or not nothing. That's disingenuous. There's not enough, and I feel like that's where we're headed to be the norm. You can either pitch or hit. Pick one. And frankly, and again, I'm not saying that the Swifties have picked hitting because they're good at both. The numbers tell you that. That's obvious if you have vision. But in the future, if you pick between pitching and hitting, I kind of think you're going to wind up picking hitting.
Oh yeah. In the minors, uh, all the time, 10 out of 10. Go hitting. That's what I've learned.
So that leads to a really interesting experience and team building and all that other stuff. If the recruitment dips, the minor's going to be in trouble, and nobody wants to retract.
No.
Nobody wants to name names and say your team gets to die that's been around since season X. Nobody wants to do that. But it
No.
may have to happen. So enjoy, even if you're not a Swifties fan, even if you hate the Swifties, even if you don't understand the banter that happens and you think Alikh is toxic and you hate it, or even if you hate Unconfident, or you hate their entire team of players because frankly there's a you problem,
That's me.
enjoy them
All right.
because I think that it's the last time that you will see that for a while, or not just enjoy their winning. Not even enjoy it. That's the wrong word. Appreciate it. Appreciate what they did, because I don't think anybody else is going to be able to accomplish it for a while. And there's two very specific reasons for that that we have talked about at length on this show. So we wanted to take a segment to appreciate what could very well be the last great Miners team.
Sometime. Yep, I completely agree.
And now that that's over, I want to take a last few moments to appreciate what a great show that this has been, this fourth episode of the Maxerners with M&T, except T's not here, it's M and B. And this may give you a BM listening to this because of how much you hated it and how horrible it was and how we talked poorly about your favorite teams. Or it will give you mutual beneficial happiness like it provided us. I just came up with something with an M and a B that was just as bad as the rest of the show. Thank you, Bazooka Joe, for joining me this week. Hey, it's like midnight on Wednesday into Thursday when I'm taping this. Go away.
I love it. Thank you for
So,
having me, Mike.
yeah, great to have you. Thank you very much to DoubleDub and Lord Parkrod for assisting me in bringing in this wonderful man as my co-host this week. Hope everything's good with you, Stolzy. Love you, and hopefully I'll see you in here next time we do the show for episode 5. Be on the lookout for that. Thank you all very much for wasening? Holy hell! Watching and listening. Thank you to Alikh, our editor, Bayley, our graphics person, our graphics wizard, and DoubleDub, our executive producer. We will see you on the next episode. Have a good day, good night, good evening, and bye-bye, everybody.